The plane didn't scream at first. It whispered, a soft rattle under your feet, a tiny shake in the armrest. Like the sky itself was clearing its throat. Most people ignored it. They kept scrolling, kept chewing, kept sleeping. Because nobody wants to be the first person to panic at 30,000 feet. But then the lights flickered. Not fully off, just enough to make everyone look up at the same time. And you could feel it. That heavy drop in your stomach that says, this isn't turbulence. A flight attendant grabbed the edge of a seat to steady herself. Somebody laughed too loudly, the fake kind. And a kid a few rows back asked, Mom, why are we going down? That's when the captain's voice came on. Calm, too calm, like he was reading a bedtime story. And he said the words every passenger hates. We're declaring an emergency. People turned to each other with wide eyes. Strangers suddenly holding hands like they'd known each other for years. Phones came out. Prayers came out. Old regrets came out. Because at that moment, everyone realized the same thing. You can't pull over a plane. And in the middle of all that fear, there was one kid sitting perfectly still. A 12-year-old girl with a worn backpack and a serious face. Not crying, not shaking, not asking questions. Just listening. Then, over the radio, the cockpit called for military support. And seconds later, the military replied in a tone that snapped the air tight. Not just urgency, respect. And they said a name that made hardened rescue crews go silent. A name that made people move faster, speak softer, and treat that little girl like she wasn't just a kid anymore. Because she wasn't. So here's the question. What kind of child hears a plane failing and stays calm enough to help fix it? And what kind of family name makes Black Hawk crews treat a passenger like a national priority? Stay with me, because what happened next is unreal. And before we start, comment where you're watching from today. Before anything went wrong, the flight felt painfully ordinary. Just another afternoon trip cutting across the country. People dragging carry-ons down the aisle, apologizing to strangers, fighting with overhead bins. A businessman in a pressed jacket was already typing like his life depended on it. An older couple compared snacks they brought from home. Someone near the window complained about legroom. Someone else joked about needing a drink already. The cabin smelled like coffee and recycled air. The kind of smell that tells you this plane has done this route 1,000 times. Nothing special, nothing dangerous, just routine. Toward the middle of the plane, a flight attendant named Lauren stopped beside a smaller seat. Reserved for kids flying alone, the ones with wristbands and paperwork thicker than their backpacks. She bent slightly so she could meet the girl's eyes, the way good attendants always do. Hey there, sweetheart, you doing okay? She asked gently. Can I get you something to drink? Water? Juice? Soda? The girl looked up from her tablet slowly. Not startled, not distracted, just calm. She had serious eyes for someone so young, the kind that made you think she listened more than she spoke. Water is fine. Thank you, she said politely. No hesitation, no childish fuss. Lauren glanced at the screen in the girl's hands. Not games, not cartoons. Diagrams, old aircraft photos, pages of notes. The kind of thing most adults would scroll past. She smiled without realizing it. Well, if you need anything, just press the call button. The girl nodded and went right back to reading. Fingers tracing lines like she actually understood what she was looking at. Around her, nobody paid much attention. To them, she was just another quiet kid heading to visit family. The kind of passenger you barely remember after landing. Her boarding pass said Maya Calder, age 12, traveling alone. Checked, stamped, approved like dozens of others that day. No one in that cabin knew yet that the name on that ticket carried weight, and that the calm little girl in that seat had grown up learning how to stay steady when everything else falls apart. Maya didn't act calm because she didn't understand what could go wrong. She acted calm because she understood it too well. Most kids her age learn the world through cartoons and apps. Maya learned it through headsets and checklists, through the low crackle of radio chatter, through adults speaking in codes they assumed she couldn't follow. Before she could spell long words, she could recognize aircraft by silhouette. Before she could do algebra, she could tell you why a landing gear didn't always behave. Not because she was trying to be impressive, but because that's what normal looked like in her house. Her earliest memories weren't playgrounds. They were hangars, cold concrete floors, the smell of fuel in the air, and her father lifting her up so she could see over the edge of a cockpit panel. He used to tap the gauges with one finger and say, Don't just look at the numbers, understand what they're telling you. And her grandfather, the one everyone spoke about like a legend, was even stricter. He believed fear was real, but panic was a choice. He taught her little rituals, small habits that kept your mind clear when your body wanted to run. Breathe in slow. Count it. Breathe out slower. Hands steady. Eyes forward. Maya didn't learn those things for fun. She learned them because life forced them into her early. 2 years earlier, her world had snapped in half. First her grandfather, gone on a mission that made the news for a week and then got replaced by the next headline. Then her father, gone in an accident that people called tragic, like that word could ever cover it. After that, everyone treated Maya like she was made of glass. Teachers lowered their voices, adults spoke in soft sentences. But grief doesn't make you fragile. Sometimes it makes you sharp. Sometimes it makes you grow up in ways you never asked for. So when she traveled the same way she lived. Quiet, prepared, with a worn backpack and books that didn't try to distract her from reality. Books that reminded her she still belonged to something bigger than loss. And that day on the plane, while other passengers saw a child who looked too serious for her age, Maya was doing what she always did when she felt the world shifting under her feet. She stayed still, she listened, and she waited, because she knew something most people never learn until it's too late. The difference between a normal day and a disaster is often just one small sound you almost ignore. About 3 hours into the flight, somewhere over the flat middle of the country, the cockpit felt it first. Not a loud bang, not smoke, not the kind of drama people imagine. Just a vibration, small but wrong, like a shopping cart while starting to wobble. Except this shopping cart was 30,000 feet in the air. Captain Grant Holloway kept his hands steady on the controls, but his eyes moved fast. Pilots don't need alarms to tell them when something is off. They feel it in the yoke, in the way the aircraft breathes, in the tiny changes that don't belong. "You feel that?" he asked, voice flat on purpose. First Officer Tessa Nguyen didn't answer right away because she was already checking the engine screens. For a second, everything looked normal. Then one gauge began to climb while another dropped. Temperature up, pressure down. 2 numbers moving in opposite directions like they were arguing. That's when the cockpit stopped being routine and turned into work. Real work. Grant reached for the engine controls with practiced precision. Tessa pulled the emergency handbook so fast it looked like muscle memory. They started calling out steps, short and sharp, the way you do when seconds matter. But before they could settle into one problem, the panel lit up again and again. Warnings stacked, systems complaining, backup struggling, hydraulics showing signs of dropping, electrical faults flickering across displays. It wasn't one failure. It was a chain. And chains don't stop unless you break them. Grant keyed the radio, voice calm but tighter now. "Mayday, Mayday, Mayday. This is Skybridge 619. We have multiple system failures, requesting vectors to the nearest suitable airport." Air traffic control answered immediately, professional, fast. They started clearing airspace like pushing furniture out of the way for a stretcher. They gave headings, distances, altitudes, and a diversion plan that sounded clean on paper. But paper doesn't fly the plane. In the cabin, the first thing passengers noticed was the sound. Engines changing tone. That low hum shifting like a singer going off-key. Then the feeling of descent, a subtle forward tilt. Enough to make a few heads lift, enough to make someone pause mid-sip. Lauren and the other flight attendants didn't wait for panic to bloom. They snapped into procedure. Securing carts, checking belts, clearing aisles, scanning faces. Moving with that forced calm that says, "We are trained for this. Please don't make it worse." Row by row, Lauren worked her way down the cabin. And when she reached the unaccompanied minor section again, she noticed something that didn't fit. Maya was already ready. Tray table locked. Seatbelt snug. Backpack tucked. Hands placed neatly like she'd rehearsed it. Lauren leaned in, trying to keep her voice warm. "We're just going to land somewhere else for safety. Okay, nothing to worry about." Maya looked up, listened to the plane like it was speaking a language she understood, then nodded once. "I know," she said quietly. "The hydraulics sound like they're dropping. They'll probably need the backup method for the landing gear." Lauren felt a cold line crawl up her spine. Because kids weren't supposed to say things like that. Not with that calm, not with that certainty. And up front, in the cockpit, Captain Holloway tightened his grip. Because the controls were starting to feel heavier, less responsive. Like the aircraft was slowly turning into something stubborn and unwilling. And that's when he realized the truth. This wasn't just an inconvenience. This was the beginning of a fight. The cabin can forgive a little shake. It can forgive a detour. It can even forgive a weird engine sound if the crew keeps smiling. But the moment the captain speaks again, you can feel the truth land before the wheels ever do. The intercom clicked. A short burst of static. Then Captain Holloway's voice, calm in that way that makes your skin tighten. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain," he said. "We're dealing with technical issues, and we are diverting for an emergency landing." The word emergency didn't echo. It didn't need to. It fell into the cabin like a heavy object. He continued, steady but direct. "The aircraft is still controllable, but we are preparing for the possibility of a hard landing." Hard landing. Two simple words that sound polite, until your brain translates them into what they really mean. Brace, impact, metal, fire, luck. For half a second, the cabin went almost silent. Like everyone's body paused to listen before their fear caught up. Then it came. A wave of noise. Small at first, then building. People whispering. People crying. Somebody saying no, no, no under their breath like repetition could change physics. Lauren and the rest of the crew moved fast. Not running, never running. But the pace changed, the eyes changed, the voices sharpened. They demonstrated brace positions, pointed, repeated instructions, made strangers look each other in the eye and promised to follow them. Feet flat. Head down. Hands over your head. Stay seated. A man near the aisle tried to crack a joke and couldn't finish it. A woman across the row clenched her necklace so hard her knuckles turned white. Someone behind Maya started praying out loud, not caring who heard. Lauren checked belts again and again, because it's the only control you have when you don't control the sky. And then she reached Maya and saw the same thing she saw earlier, only clearer now. Maya wasn't frozen. She was focused. She listened to the aircraft, not like a passenger, like a person studying a problem. Her eyes flicked upward every time the plane shuddered. Her jaw tight, her breathing slow, measured, deliberate. Lauren crouched beside her, lowering her voice. "Hey, you're doing great. Okay, just keep your seatbelt on. We're going to get down safely." Maya nodded, but her eyes didn't carry the wide, lost fear most kids would have. They carried something else. Awareness. She leaned in slightly and said, almost to herself, "The controls feel heavy now, don't they?" Lauren blinked. "What?" Maya didn't raise her voice, didn't try to impress anyone. "I've heard it before," she said softly. "When hydraulics start failing, everything gets harder to move. They'll probably have to extend the gear manually." Lauren's throat went dry, because Maya wasn't guessing. She was identifying the situation like she'd lived inside this kind of pressure before. Up front, the pilots were fighting the plane inch by inch. The yoke resisting, the systems slipping, backups straining like tired muscles. And the truth was getting sharper with every second. They weren't just landing early. They were landing injured. And in the cabin, people were starting to understand a brutal fact. This was no longer about comfort, or delays, or customer service. This was about survival. Up in the cockpit, Captain Holloway stopped pretending this was a normal emergency. Because normal emergencies do not keep getting worse. He keyed the radio again, voice controlled but sharper now. "Center, Skybridge 619, we need military assistance. Any available aircraft for escort and crash response. Our controllability is degrading." That single request flipped a switch in a world most passengers never think about. A world of standby crews, rapid launch checklists, and people trained to run toward danger instead of away from it. At a nearby military field, alarms went off. Not sirens, not movie drama. Just clipped voices, fast footsteps, and a hangar coming alive. 2 Black Hawk helicopters were rolled out and spun up for launch. They were not there to fight anyone. They were there to watch, to coordinate, to pull people from wreckage if the worst happened. The kind of help you pray you never need. The lead crew lifted off in minutes. Major Jordan Park in the front seat, eyes forward, voice steady. His co-pilot, Captain Elena Rios, already talking to air traffic control, getting headings, closing the distance. In the back, the medic and rescue specialist checked straps, oxygen, trauma kits, and that calm, hard focus that means they have done this before. As they approached, the airliner came into view. A big passenger jet flying, just a little wrong. Nose slightly high, wings not perfectly level. Like it was being held together by willpower and training. Park brought the Black Hawk into a safe trailing position. Another helicopter slid into place on the other side. Both keeping distance, both watching like hawks, because that is what they were built to do. Rios received a data packet that included the passenger manifest. Names, ages, seat numbers, notes for medical needs, unaccompanied minors. She scrolled through it quickly, routine at first. Then her thumb stopped, and her eyes stopped with it. Maya Calder, she read quietly. Age 12, traveling alone. Rios blinked, scrolled up, then back down. Like her brain refused to accept what her eyes were seeing. She leaned toward Major Park, voice suddenly smaller. Jordan, we have a Calder on board. Park's head turned sharply. Say that again. Rios swallowed, then said it clearly. Maya Calder, unaccompanied minor. The Calder family. For a moment, the cockpit of that helicopter went quiet in a way that had nothing to do with fear. It was recognition. It was respect. The Calder name meant something in military aviation. Not celebrity, not politics, not money. Something heavier. A legacy written in rescue missions, medevac flights, and funerals with folded flags. Major Park keyed the radio, and his tone changed. Not louder, just different. Like every syllable suddenly carried weight. All stations, this is Rescue 2-1, he said. Be advised, we have Maya Calder on the passenger manifest. Confirming, Calder family on board. That message moved through channels fast. Through controllers, through ground crews, through emergency teams lining up at the diversion airport. And you could feel how the entire system leaned forward. Not because they did not care about the other passengers, but because this one name hit a nerve in everyone who had ever worn a uniform. In the airliner cockpit, Captain Holloway heard the transmission and frowned, because he did not know the story behind the name. But he knew the sound of a room snapping to attention, even through a radio. Rescue 2-1, Skybridge 619, Holloway said. Confirm what you mean about that passenger. Major Park answered carefully, respectful but direct. Skybridge 619, we confirm Maya Calder is on board. She is family of Brigadier Nolan Calder and Flight Lieutenant Ethan Calder. We are prioritizing every available resource for your landing. We have you covered. Back in the cabin, Lauren received a quick message from the lead attendant, voice tight. The military keeps repeating a child's name like it matters. Lauren's eyes went straight to Maya's row, to the quiet girl with the worn backpack. Still calm, still listening. Lauren walked back down the aisle, slower now, like she was approaching something sacred. She crouched beside Maya again, voice soft. Maya, she said, they know your name. The military, they said it like it meant something. Is there something I should understand? For the first time, Maya's composure cracked, just slightly. Her eyes glossed over, not with panic, but with memory. She hesitated, then spoke quietly. My grandfather was Brigadier Nolan Calder, she said. He died on a rescue mission overseas. And my dad, her voice tightened, Flight Lieutenant Ethan Calder. He died 2 years ago on a medical flight. I'm going to see my grandma. She's all I have left. Lauren felt her chest go tight. Because suddenly this was not just a plain emergency. It was a moment where a whole community, a whole system, was reacting to a child who had already buried the kind of heroes people only talk about during speeches. And outside the window, the Black Hawk stayed close. Watching, guarding. Not because Maya was famous, but because to them, she was family. The runway was getting closer, but the plane was getting worse. Up front, Captain Holloway and First Officer Nguyen weren't flying anymore. They were wrestling. Every small correction took effort. Every movement felt delayed, heavy, like the aircraft was thinking about refusing. And down in the escort helicopters, Major Park watched the jet the way rescue crews watch a cracking bridge. Not for drama, for signs. Holloway's voice cut through the radio again, controlled but blunt. Rescue 2-1, we're going to need visual confirmation when we extend the gear. We may be on backups. Copy, Skybridge 619, Park replied. We're in position. We've got eyes on everything. In the cockpit, Nguyen reached for the emergency gear handle. This wasn't the normal smooth button press pilots practiced on sunny days. This was the mechanical last resort, the kind you hope never comes out of its cover. She pulled. The plane gave a deep shudder, and a low, Ugly sound rolled through the cabin like something big and reluctant moving inside the belly of the aircraft. Passengers heard it and went quiet again. Because everyone knows that sound, even if they don't know why. Metal shifting where it shouldn't. In the helicopters, Park and Rios leaned forward, eyes locked on the underside of the jet. Gear doors opened. Nose gear started down. Right main began extending, steady and slow. For one breath, it looked like it might work. Like the story might end the easy way. Then Rios's voice tightened. Left main is hanging, she said. Not dropping clean. Park moved his helicopter slightly, careful not to spook the air currents. He needed the angle, the confirmation, the ugly truth. And there it was, clear as daylight. The left main landing gear was stuck halfway, dangling like a broken limb, refusing to lock. Park keyed the radio immediately, calm but urgent. Skybridge 619, your left main gear is not fully extended. It's about halfway down, cannot confirm lock. In the cockpit, Holloway didn't swear. He didn't raise his voice. But Nguyen saw his jaw clamp hard. Because that one problem could turn a hard landing into a full disaster. A jet landing with one main gear half out doesn't just land crooked. It can collapse. It can tip. A wing can slam the runway and spark. Fuel can ignite. And suddenly the runway becomes a battlefield. Nguyen ran the checklist like a machine. Recycle, alternate extension, try to force a lock. Nothing. The indicators stayed wrong. The system refused to give them a clean answer. Holloway called ATC and the rescue birds again, voice cutting through the noise. We're going to attempt to troubleshoot. We may need priority fire and med response on arrival. On the ground, emergency vehicles lined up like a wall of red and white. Foam trucks, ambulances, crash crews, all waiting for an ending they couldn't control. Inside the cabin, the crew could feel the shift in urgency. The tone changes when the cockpit knows something is seriously off. Lauren moved faster now, checking belts again, repeating brace instructions, her voice steady but tight. People cried openly. Some people froze, staring forward like they could stare through the seat and see the runway. A man squeezed his daughter so hard she yelped. A woman kept whispering, please, 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 like it was a switch that could bring hydraulics back. And in the middle of it, Maya sat with her hands gripping the armrests. Her breathing still slow, but her eyes sharper now, tracking the sounds, the timing, the way the aircraft responded. Because she understood something most passengers didn't. If that gear didn't lock, they weren't landing. They were crashing in a controlled direction. Lauren leaned close, trying to keep Maya seated and safe. Maya, stay buckled. Okay, stay right here. Maya nodded, but her face had changed. Not panic. Decision. She stared toward the front of the plane, listening to the strained announcements, the rushed movement, the fear trying to climb the walls. And it was like something inside her clicked into place. Staying calm was no longer enough. Now, someone had to do something. Maya didn't stand up like a child breaking rules. She stood up like someone answering a call. 1 second she was buckled in, eyes forward, hands tight on the armrests. The next, the seat belt clicked open, quiet but final. And she stepped into the aisle while the plane was still moving down through the sky. Lauren's head snapped around. Her training took over instantly. Maya, no, sit down right now. She hissed, reaching for her gently but urgently. Sweetheart, you have to stay buckled. Maya didn't argue like a kid. She didn't whine or plead. She looked up at Lauren with those serious eyes and said, clear and firm, I need to talk to the pilots. Lauren almost laughed out of shock, not because it was funny, but because it was unreal. The pilots are trying to save the plane, she whispered, voice tight. They cannot be interrupted. Maya nodded once, like she'd already considered that. Exactly, she said. That's why I have to talk to them. Lauren's stomach dropped. Because for the first time, she realized Maya wasn't acting brave. She was acting precise. Like she had a solution and it was ticking away inside her head. Maya, Lauren tried again, softer now. I know you're smart. I know you've been through a lot. But this is not. It's the left main gear. Maya cut in, still not raising her voice. It's not locking. Lauren froze. Her throat went dry. Because the crew hadn't announced that detail. Only the cockpit and the escort helicopters knew. Maya watched Lauren's face change and kept going. My dad taught me emergency procedures, she said. He told me about gear that won't lock. And what pilots do when the checklist doesn't help. Lauren stared at her for a half-second too long. A flight attendant's whole job is rules, and every rule in her body was screaming. Keep the child seated, do not create chaos, do not distract the cockpit. But another part of her, the part that had just watched the cabin tip into terror, the part that heard the aircraft struggling like a living thing, could not ignore one hard fact. They were running out of options. Lauren guided Maya toward the front, moving fast but careful, blocking curious eyes, holding Maya steady as the plane jolted. Passengers turned their heads, confused, frightened, searching for meaning in the movement. A few people whispered, "Where is she going?" Like maybe the answer would save them. At the galley, Lauren grabbed the intercom phone to the cockpit. Her hand shook once, then steadied. She pressed the button, heard the ringing, felt her heart pounding against her ribs. Captain Holloway's voice came through strained, clipped. "What?" Lauren swallowed, forcing her words out clean. "Captain," she said. "This is Lauren in the cabin. The unaccompanied minor," Maya called her. "She says she knows something about the landing gear problem. She's asking to speak to you." There was a pause. A dangerous pause. The kind where you can feel a pilot weighing risk like a weapon in his hand. Then Holloway spoke again, and his tone had changed. Not softer, more serious. "Maya called her," he repeated, as if he needed to hear the name himself. "Put her on." Lauren handed the receiver to Maya, and Maya didn't hesitate. She took it with both hands like it mattered, like she respected what was happening up there. "Captain Holloway," she said, voice steady. "I'm sorry to interrupt, but I think I know something that might help." Another beat of silence. Then, from the speaker, Holloway's voice, controlled and blunt. "Talk." Maya looked up at Lauren for just a second. Not fear, not doubt, just a small, human moment of, "This is real." Then she spoke into the phone, carefully choosing simple words. "My dad told me sometimes the gear doesn't lock because it's stuck," she said. "Not broken, just stuck. And sometimes, if the plane makes sharp turns while the gear is down, the force can shake it into place." He called it a shake lock. "I don't know if it works on this plane, but if nothing else works, it might be worth trying." Lauren's breath caught, because it was the first time she heard someone offer an idea that wasn't just hope. It was a plan. Up front, Holloway and Gwen exchanged a look. The kind of look that says, "This is not in the book, but the book isn't saving us right now." And outside, in the escort helicopter, Major Park watched the jet holding steady but struggling, ready to call out anything he saw, ready for the next move, whatever it was. Because now the story had shifted. It wasn't just pilots and machines anymore. A 12-year-old kid had just stepped into the fight. Captain Holloway didn't celebrate the idea. He didn't even comment on how insane it was that it came from a 12-year-old. He just made the only decision that mattered. Try it. He keyed the radio to the escort helicopters, voice tight but controlled. "Rescue 2-1. We're attempting aggressive maneuvering to force the left gear to lock. I need your eyes on that gear the whole time." Major Park answered instantly, no hesitation. "Copy Skybridge 619. We're in position. We'll call it the second we see a change." In the cockpit, Holloway looked at Gwen. Her face was calm, but her hands were braced like she was holding the plane together with grip strength alone. They both knew the risk. Bank too hard, and you could tear the gear off. Bank too soft and nothing changes. Do nothing, and you land broken. Holloway drew in one breath, then rolled the aircraft left. Not gently, not for passenger comfort. A real turn. The kind that makes a full cabin of adults suddenly understand how thin the air really is. In the cabin, the tilt came like a shove. People gasped. A few screamed. Overhead bins creaked. The floor felt wrong under their shoes, like gravity had shifted its rules. Lauren gripped a seat back to keep her balance, eyes wide. Passengers clung to armrests and each other. Brace positions breaking, then reforming. Because nobody expects a jet in crisis to start turning like it's dodging something. Maya was back in her seat now, buckled tight. Her eyes shut for a moment as she counted her breathing the way she'd been taught. In slow, out slower. Like she was holding her fear in a fist and refusing to let it spill. Up front, Holloway rolled the plane back right, sharper this time. The aircraft groaned. Not a sound you hear often in commercial flying. A sound that says, "This machine is under stress." In Major Park's helicopter, the jet's belly filled his view. Gear doors open, wind hammering the half-locked assembly. Rios leaned forward, eyes locked on the stubborn left main gear like she could will it into place. "Come on," she muttered under her breath. Not professional, just human. Holloway gave one more hard bank, then another, controlled but aggressive. Left, right, left. A deliberate series, like shaking a stuck drawer until it slides free. For a second, nothing changed. Then Park saw it. The left main gear shifted, dropped a few inches, hesitated, then snapped down like something finally surrendered. Rios's voice cut through the radio, sharp with adrenaline. It moved. Park didn't wait. He keyed his mic, voice loud with urgency but clear. "Skybridge 619, left main just extended further, stand by." Another heartbeat. The gear jolted again, and this time it slammed into position, clean, aligned, locked. Park's voice turned firm, almost triumphant. "Skybridge 619, your left main gear is down and appears locked. Repeat, gear appears locked." In the cockpit, Nguyen stared at the panel. The red light flickered, then changed. Green. For 1 second, Holloway didn't speak. He just exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for 3 hours. Then he looked over his shoulder at Maya, still seated behind the cockpit door, unseen by passengers, but present in every decision that had just happened. "You may have saved this plane," he said quietly, more to himself than to anyone. There was no time to feel it. Not yet. They still had to land. The diversion airport runway was lined with emergency vehicles. Fire trucks, ambulances, foam units, lights flashing in the gray distance. Not for show. For a scenario nobody wanted. The Black Hawks slid into formation on both sides of the jet like silent guardians. Park kept his voice steady in Holloway's ear, calling out alignment, gear position, anything that looked off. Because now the margin for error was still thin, just less hopeless. Holloway brought the aircraft in. The controls sluggish, the plane stubborn. A wounded animal still dangerous to handle. The runway rushed up. The cabin braced again. Faces pressed down, hands locked over heads. Prayers spoken into sleeves and seat fabric. Then impact. Not a smooth kiss. A hard, honest hit. The kind that shakes teeth and rattles bones. But it stayed straight. No collapsing wing, no violent tilt. The wheels held. The jet roared down the runway as foam sprayed and brakes fought for control. Slowing, shuddering. Finally rolling to a stop with the whole cabin holding its breath like one body. And then, the sound that comes after survival. Crying. Laughing. Applause that starts in one row and spreads like a wave. People hugging strangers. People shaking. People whispering thank you to nobody and everybody at once. In the cockpit, Holloway sat back for a second, eyes closed, exhausted. Then he picked up the intercom, voice rougher now, more human. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, "welcome to Cedar Ridge Regional. We are safely on the ground. And you're here today because a lot of people did their jobs under pressure, and because one very brave young passenger helped us when we needed it most." Down the aisle, Lauren looked toward Maya's row, and Maya finally let the tears come. Not fear, not panic, just release. The kind that hits when you realize you made it through another impossible moment. They didn't let the cabin rush out like a normal flight. Not with smoke crews outside, not with foam still clinging to the runway, not with everyone's hands still shaking. The doors opened, slides were ready, and airport rescue teams moved like a practiced machine. Keep moving. Stay together. Watch your step. Passengers stumbled onto the tarmac, blinking like they'd come out of a storm. Some kissed the ground without caring who saw. Some just stood there staring at the plane like it had betrayed them and saved them in the same breath. And then the Black Hawks landed nearby. Rotors chopping the air, medics and crew stepping out with the kind of posture that makes people instinctively give them space. Major Jordan Park didn't ask for a press conference. Didn't look for praise. He walked straight to the airline supervisor and said one sentence, calm and firm. "Where is Maya Calder?" Lauren was still beside Maya, still refusing to leave her. Because at this point Maya wasn't just an unaccompanied minor. She was the emotional center of a disaster that didn't happen. When Park saw her, he stopped, and something in his face shifted. Not softness, not pity. Recognition. He snapped to attention and saluted her, crisp and exact. The kind of salute that makes you stand taller just by witnessing it. And behind him, other uniformed personnel did the same, almost automatically, like muscle memory. Like honoring her was the most natural thing in the world. "Maya Calder," Park said, voice steady. On behalf of everyone who served with your grandfather and your father, we're honored we could be here today. They would be proud of you." Maya swallowed hard, stood straight, and returned the salute the way she'd been taught when she was little. Not sloppy, not cute. Correct. "Thank you, sir," she said quietly. "My grandfather always said the military takes care of its own. Thank you for proving he meant it." That sentence hit Park harder than any emergency call, because it wasn't a slogan to her. It was a promise she'd been living off since the people she loved stopped coming home. Word spread fast through the terminal. Not the messy kind of rumor, the clear kind that travels when fear turns into gratitude. Passengers from the flight started looking for her. The businessman who hadn't looked up during boarding came over with wet eyes and an awkward shake of his head. "I didn't even notice you," he admitted. "And then you saved all of us. Thank you." The older couple hugged her like she was their own grandkid, whispering blessings, hands trembling. A stranger pressed a small necklace into her palm and said, "Keep this. You deserve something that reminds you you're not alone." And Maya just kept nodding, quiet, overwhelmed. Because being thanked by 100 adults is a strange thing for a kid, even a kid who's been forced to grow up too fast. Then the media arrived, because of course they did. Cameras, microphones, people hungry for a headline. A 12-year-old saves plane. Hero kid. Miracle landing. But the military crews formed a barrier without being asked. Not aggressive, just immovable. Like a wall made of principle. No cameras in her face. No strangers demanding tears on cue. Not today. Someone from the airline arranged a phone call to her grandmother. And the moment Maya heard that voice, the last of her control finally broke. Not in a dramatic way. In a real way. A child's sob that had been waiting in her chest for years. "Grandma," she cried. "I was so scared. I tried to do what Dad taught me. I tried." Her grandmother didn't try to sound strong. She just sounded present. "I know, baby," she said. "I know. And I'm proud of you. Your grandfather and your father would be proud too." Maya covered her face with one hand and cried like she hadn't let herself cry in a long time. Because surviving something like that doesn't just scare you. It reminds you of every loss you've already carried. Later, Captain Holloway and First Officer Nguyen found her before she left. They looked exhausted, pale, like people who had just wrestled death and got away. Holloway crouched down to Maya's level, voice softer than it had been in the cockpit. "In all my years flying," he said, "I've never had a passenger help solve a problem like you did. That took courage. And it took knowledge. You gave us both." Nguyen hugged her, tight and quick, no professionalism left. Just gratitude. "Don't ever think you're just a kid," she whispered. "Not after today." Maya was rebooked on another flight to San Diego. And this time the airline broke their own rules. They moved her into the front cabin. Not luxury, not a reward. A quiet space, a little more safety, a little more dignity. As she walked down the terminal, people stopped and clapped. Not a loud performance. A steady, respectful applause that followed her like a warm wind. The second flight was smooth, uneventful. And somehow that felt harder. Because when things go quiet again, your mind finally has room to replay everything. Maya stared out the window and thought about the two men who taught her calm. Her grandfather's voice telling her panic is a choice. Her father's voice telling her to understand the machine, not just follow the book. And she realized something that hurt and healed at the same time. They were gone, but they had left her tools. And those tools had saved lives. When the plane finally landed in San Diego, her grandmother was waiting at the gate. Smaller than Maya remembered, more tired in the shoulders, but with eyes bright like fire. They held each other for a long time, not caring who watched. Her grandmother pulled back and cupped Maya's face, searching it like she needed proof she was real. "I heard what you did," she said, voice shaking. "You brought yourself home." Maya nodded, tears returning. "I just did what they taught me," she whispered. "I just tried." Her grandmother smiled through her tears. "That's the whole point, sweetheart. When people panic, you think. When people freeze, you move. That's what your name means." In the weeks after, letters arrived. From passengers who wanted to say thank you properly. From flight crew who couldn't stop thinking about that day. From military aviators who had served with her grandfather or flown with her father. One letter was stamped with official insignia. An honorary recognition from a pilots' association. Not because Maya was old enough to fly, but because she already understood the hardest part of aviation. Stay calm. Think clearly. Use what you know. Don't quit when lives depend on you. Maya placed that letter in a box at her grandmother's house, next to the folded flags, the medals, the photos of two men in flight suits smiling into the sun. And sometimes late at night, when grief tried to sneak back in and convince her she was alone, she'd open that box and read the words again, remembering the radio call, the way the Black Hawks spoke her name, the way grown soldiers saluted a child. Not because she was special in the way the world usually means it, but because she carried a legacy of service and sacrifice. She was still a kid. A backpack, school books, a future that hadn't happened yet. But now she also knew something adults spend their whole lives trying to learn. Courage isn't loud. It isn't perfect. It's the decision to act while your hands are shaking. And on a day when a plane started falling out of the sky, a 12-year-old girl didn't just survive. She helped bring everyone home. If you made it to the end, tell me this in the comments. Do you think bravery is something you're born with, or something you learn when life leaves you no other choice?